My name is Tom Benton and I'm the village manager. I'd like to introduce our mayor. McAdam Glenn is in the back room here. Councilwoman Alice Birch was here.
She's right here.
Oh, there's Alice right there. So again, I want to thank you all for coming. We have invited the public information officer from Brightline, the train, commuter train coming through here. Miss Allie Soul is here tonight to talk to you about the train, and she's here to answer any questions you may have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allie and let you take us through your presentation.
Thank you. So thank you to the mayor and to the councilwoman and to Tom for inviting me here tonight. As he mentioned, my name is Allie Soul. I'm the Director of Public Affairs and Media Relations for Brightline. I've been with the company since it started, so I'm happy. I hope that I can answer most of your questions in my presentation. So what I'm going to go over is frequently asked questions that Tom told me his office gets. And then at Brightline, safety is paramount to us. So we take every opportunity that we can when we're out in the community to give people also a presentation on rail safety. So I will make it quick and informative, and then I'm happy to answer your questions. So Brightline is the only privately funded express intercity passenger rail service in America. We are the legacy. I'm sorry?
Please talk louder. We can't hear you from the trees.
Okay. We are Brightline. Is that better? Brightline is the only privately funded. I've never had somebody ask me to talk louder, so I'm happy that you just did that. We're the only privately funded express passenger rail service in America. We're the legacy company of Henry Flagler, hence why we are operating on the Florida East Coast Railway, which is right outside the door. We are currently operating between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. Our phase 1 is downtown Miami to downtown Fort Lauderdale to downtown West Palm Beach. Our phase 2 will take us to Orlando. We anticipate starting construction on the extension to Orlando later this year. And everyone wants to know when we are getting into Miami. Obviously, you in this room live very close to the tracks. You've seen Brightline trains operating. That is all part of the crew testing and simulation that is occurring prior to when we can actually terminate and carry guests into downtown Miami. So a few weeks ago, the first Brightline train actually terminated in the downtown Miami station. We are going to continue doing this over the next couple of weeks until we launch service. Also, over the next couple of weeks, what we did was on April 11th, actually that date is wrong, we hosted a safety press conference with the mayor of Miami-Dade County, the city of Miami mayor, and we really did this with the school district to bring awareness and attention to this issue that is so important to us, which is how to be safe around active railroad tracks. I've been passing information out. We passed out information through the school district to the elementary school that's right behind here. We have electronic information that we've also shared with the village in hopes that we can continue sharing this, and I have it with me today, on how to be safe and make smart choices around active railroad tracks. And so safety. We believe in engineering, enforcement, and education. So all of our grade crossings meet the highest safety standards set by the FRA and the Florida Department of Transportation. Brightline is also going to install positive train control, which is a signal override system that talks to the speed and the operator who's conducting the train. We also installed what's called constant warning time at every grade crossing, which means that the grade crossing goes down for the same amount of time for a passenger train as it would for a freight train. How many people have been stopped by a Brightline train already? And how long did it take you?
Minute.
45 seconds? 30 seconds? That is how long it will always take. So the gate arm goes down about 25 seconds before the train approaches. That train is traveling max speed around 79 miles an hour, so it goes through in a matter of seconds, and then the gate arm returns to the upright position. Obviously a freight train takes a little bit longer since they can be up to 2 miles in length, but the Brightline trains are 500 feet in length and traveling at a slightly higher speed. So we also have a dedicated safety and security team. This team has actually already met with the Village Police Department. Your police department came into our Miami Central station where they had a tour of the station. They will also be able to see the train set, and they've also met and worked with our first responders so that they have one-on-one help and training in case of anything that could happen within the village limits. And then we also have a trilingual safety campaign, which I have materials here with me, hard copies, and I have additional ones in my car that we'd love to leave at the community center that talk about education and safety tips for being safe around railroad tracks. We've also been running public service announcements both on the radio and on TV in English, Spanish, and Creole, and we will continue to do that through our launch and really over the course of the system operating. So what everybody wants to know, our current testing and construction schedule. So we have started simulated service between Fort Lauderdale and downtown Miami. This will continue over the coming weeks, and then soon we will announce a launch date for Miami. So I do not have a launch date at this time. We will launch service with, everybody's heard probably that 16 and 16 number of northbound and southbound trains. We will not launch with the 16 and 16. We launched Fort Lauderdale to West Palm Beach with 11 and 11, and on one day a 12 and 12. So we're looking at launching with a reduced schedule, similar to what we did between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. It will be an introductory service, and then we will eventually ramp up to the 16 northbound and the 16 southbound trains. Tom also asked me to touch on the quiet zones. So currently, trains are required to blow their horns as they approach at-grade crossings because it is federal law. They do that to warn motorists and pedestrians that a train is approaching. However, cities and counties along railroad corridors can apply for what's called quiet zones. So Brightline partnered with the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization, and we are constructing the supplemental safety measures or the added gates in some locations or medians that would allow the area from Port Miami to the northern Miami-Dade County line to become a continuous quiet zone. So we've already completed a portion of that work when we were out in the corridor doing the upgrades required for our system. We have to come back in some areas and add those 4 quadrant gates in Miami-Dade County. And so that quiet zone is expected to come online probably around the summertime. I know that Tom is coordinating directly with the TPO and Miami-Dade County on that, because Brightline's responsibility in that process is to add the infrastructure to the crossing. We agreed to do the construction work, but applying for a quiet zone is the responsibility of the local authorities who have jurisdiction over the roadways. Therefore, Brightline cannot apply for a quiet zone. So rail safety outreach, I mentioned we're engaged in an aggressive outreach program with our local partners and with hopefully all of you. Operation Lifesaver is a national nonprofit dedicated to raising awareness about rail safety. We partnered with them more than a year ago to create these materials that you see in front of me that are also online, and to develop this campaign that we rolled out in early last year. Again, myself, more than 40 of my teammates are authorized to come and give what I'm going to transition to a rail safety presentation. We're happy to do that at HOA meetings. Really, if you have a Rotary Club or a Kiwanis group, we want to come out and be in the community talking about rail safety. And then we have also deployed VMS boards at 23 high traffic crossings between downtown Fort Lauderdale and Miami that say more trains moving faster, stay off train tracks. So those signs will actually continue to rotate as we roll out our service to other crossings. And then we also will be launching safety ambassadors who will go to high traffic areas along the corridor, such as Publix's, Home Depot's, crossings, and hand out this information that you see in front of us, talking to people about being safe and staying off active railroad tracks. And this is some images of what our safety ambassadors have been doing and the materials that we've created. And now I'm going to transition into giving an Operation Lifesaver presentation. So it's important to know that while passenger trains run on a schedule, freight trains do not, and sometimes trains can be late. So anytime you approach a railroad tracks, you should always expect a train. Anytime is train time. And what's missing from this picture? Sure.
The driver.
He's hidden. Yes.
There's no gate. I've lived here 40 years. I'm a teacher, retired teacher from Dade County Public Schools. I'm very concerned that we have a poor culture here in Miami Shores. We cross the railroad. We have schools. We have, say, Rosa Lima. We have Miami Country Day. We have the public schools or whatever. What kind of education has been given to the schools in particular?
So we've handed out all of this, and we've worked with the school district since last year. And about a month ago, before we started running regular service on these tracks, we handed out information in the languages that the school district supplied to us to the schools for them to hand out to their
What about the
families.
community center? This is huge. We have children, you know, in all
Absolutely.
grades.
That's why we're here today at the request of the village to have, the village has definitely been provided with electronic copies of all of our materials, and we've asked for help to spread them out, and that's also why we're here, is to get the message out.
Have the schools responded?
So we handed all of the information to the schools.
Have they responded?
Yes, they received the information, and they indicated to the school district that they would hand out the information.
Because we have kids, this is,
We've
we have a
also,
poor culture. We
Understood.
are used to covering, to walking across the tracks.
we have also been working with bus drivers to educate them. I know the school district has spoken with all of the principals of the schools along the corridor and talked to them about the importance of handing out the information and making sure students and families are aware.
Will there be additional information or stops so that they cannot cross?
I'm not sure I understand that
That's
question.
huge. That's
So-
huge.
So it is, I understand what you're saying is that people are used to crossing the tracks.
For 40 plus years, at least since I've been.
Right, and that's why we're, again, working in 3 languages and trying to get out in the community to educate people that while you may have been doing it for 40 years and not had an issue, that behavior is illegal and dangerous. And so we're trying to change that behavior and to make sure people understand that the only safe place to cross the tracks is at designated crossings like there's right outside.
Will there be additional stop points or warning signs between the streets that cross over?
So every crossing has,
Not every crossing,
Flashing
I'm
red
talking
lights?
streets from 96
so we
down
have
to 100.
we put yard signs out and along the corridor in 3 languages, telling people to stay off the tracks. So we are definitely out in the community trying to get the information across. So I'm going to go back to this, and then I'm happy to continue answering
I have a
questions.
question similar to what she was asking.
Uh-huh.
I come to the community center 3 times a week in the mornings. And I'm concerned about safety because many times the gates, the arm gates are not functioning. The flashlights are not flashing. I had a situation where I was ready to cross and I saw the train that was half a mile away. There was nobody at the crossing here, the gates, the arm gates were not down. And I know there's been already multiple casualties since Brightline started running. So,
Yeah, so to start, safety is our first priority as well. The incidents that occurred did so because people knowingly went under or around the infrastructure that was in place to protect them. So, I mean, it is unfortunate and avoidable, which is why we are out in the community talking about it today. And some of the incidents that occurred were suicides, which is also why, we're trying to work on having people understand that, there is help and they can get help where they need to get help. As for the grade crossing, every grade crossing is tested and works. If you see a problem, I would strongly suggest that you call. There is At each grade crossing, there is a blue sign that has an emergency number on it that reports directly back to dispatch. That's both on the Florida East Coast Railway and on the Tri-Rail tracks. So if you notice a problem with the gates, you can call that number directly and report it. The railroad operates 24/7, so they always have people out in the community.
Sounds like it's gonna be an ongoing problem now for people that live near the crossings.
I'm not sure what you mean by a problem, because the infrastructure has all been upgraded and is being tested to work as appropriate.
But what I mean by a problem is, if the arm gates aren't working properly, or if the lights aren't flashing, that's,
I can assure you that we have people out in the corridor every day who are making sure that the infrastructure
the day
works.
that I had been scared, you know, there was nobody at the crossings, and nothing seemed to be working.
Obviously, I was not there, so I can't comment on that directly. But again, if there's ever that kind of situation, there is a blue sign at every grade crossing, and if you feel as if there's an emergency, I would strongly encourage you to call that number or 911 and report that that's happening.
I have a question about
Sure.
something that concerns us all, and that's the subject of whistles. Are we gonna listen 5 minutes for the whistling every time a train comes through 26 times a day?
So as I mentioned earlier, this area will become a quiet zone in the summer, which means that the trains will no longer have to blow their horns, neither freight nor passenger trains, because additional supplemental safety measures have been
It's only for 3 months or is it for 9 months?
it is going to be a few months. So this summer,
I'm sorry.
the quiet zone should be in effect this summer. So not 9 months, because in 9 months we might be in 2019, but over the summer, the quiet zone will take effect.
And then in the fall, how many times will we hear whistles all day
None.
long?
So once the quiet zone goes into effect, that means that additional supplemental safety measures have been in place. That means that the train no longer has to blow its horn to warn motorists. However, if there's an emergency, there's a car stopped on the tracks or somebody trespassing, the train engineer has the full authority to blow his or the horn on the train.
But just not steady whistle blowing?
That's correct.
like
That will go away after the summer.
Okay,
Excuse
thank
me,
you.
do you know if, because what you're saying is about a Brightline, but do you know the rest of the trains that go by that those?
They will also be in the quiet zone. A quiet zone is for all trains, both freight and passenger. So you will not hear the trains after the summer unless there is an emergency on the tracks. Safety first. Yes.
Does the engineer have a device, or does he know when the gates are not working? If he's going at 70 miles an hour, he should have some sort of device that will feed back to him that the gates aren't working right. Is there that sort of thing?
So I think it's important to know that the gates are, they're powered on electricity, and if the electricity goes out in the gates, they automatically default to the down position, which is why if you ever come to a railroad crossing and the arms are down and you don't see a train, it could be because at any case, something has happened to knock power out from that gate arm. So obviously, the gates go down to protect you from a train that's going back.
But does the engineer have some sort of device
I would
that
have
he
to get back
knows?
to you on the exact answer for that.
No, Ally, he does not. He has his eyes.
He does have
Remember,
his eyes.
folks, while you're all excited about no horns, remember that some years ago, we banned whistles, and the death rate increased by 1,400%. Because, folks, there is no cure for stupidity. And you have to remember that. And the engineers will be watching. They will have their eyes focused at all times. And if a gate is not working, they will know. They will call it immediately. They have instantaneous contact with the dispatcher, and it'll be taken care of. And for you folks who are worried about the 800 number, as Ally said, either dial 911 or call your local police department. They will act on it immediately.
Yes.
I'm not talking about stupidity, I'm talking about kids. We have students, we have young people in Miami Shores that cross back and forth. It's not stupidity, it's kids.
That's
Excuse me, Helen, I understand that, and Mayor Glenn has met with representatives of each and every school, each and every school in the area, each and every one. They all attended, they all received copies of all the literature, they are all passing it out to their parents, and they are beginning from the very youngest children, who are right here next to the track, to educate those kids from the time they are very small, that these train tracks are not going to be the same as they were for their parents. So we are doing that, and Mayor Glenn has actively solicited the cooperation of every school head in our region.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay, so thank you. And please, let's let Ally, I know you're very anxious to have your questions, but let's let Ally finish her presentation first, and then we'll go ahead and take some more questions.
So, it's just really important. The first thing is it is illegal to stop on the railroad tracks. But in the case that your car gets stuck and a train is approaching, the first thing that you should do automatically is get out of the car and get away from the tracks, even if you don't see a train. Locate, as I mentioned, the blue sign, or call 911 and tell the local police or the FEC dispatch that there is a car stopped on the tracks. Because if you do make that notification and there is a train in the area, they can stop the train so that an incident does not occur. This is very important. We talked about the blue sign. So flashing red lights, while this may seem a simple concept, it's really important to remind people that flashing red lights warn people that a train is approaching. If the lights are flashing red and the gate arms are down, it is the law to stop in front of the gates. You can actually get points on your license and receive a fine if you drive around the gates, and if you walk under the gates, you can get a citation and a fine. So it's really important to follow the law. Here's another thing. Another important concept for the tracks that we have out today is that the FEC corridor has historically been double-tracked. Most recently, it was single-tracked. Brightline put in the double track to resume passenger service. So this means that two trains can be traveling in opposite directions at any time. So if you're stopped at the gates and a train goes by and you don't see another train approaching and the gates are still down, it does not mean go around the gates because the gates are broken. It means stay behind the gates because another train could be approaching and that other train could be coming in the opposite direction. In all of our presentations, as I mentioned, we've been meeting with bus drivers, both from the county and from the school district, and they've said, you know, it's our law to stop at railroad tracks and look both ways to make sure that a train isn't approaching. And every time we stop, we either get rear-ended or people beep at us, people are impatient. And so Brightline thought it was important to create this slide to educate people that there are certain types of vehicles that by law are required to stop at railroad tracks. And so this is obviously for safety, and we want to make sure everybody is aware of that and helps them follow the law. So, trespassing. The railroad tracks are private property. They're not a bikeway, they're not a sidewalk, they're not a convenient cut-through point to get to the Publix that you might not want to walk another block to. They are private property, and just as a road is for cars, railroad tracks are for trains. And so trespassing on Brightline and the railroad tracks is illegal, and it is very dangerous. And making that decision can cost you your life, which is why it is so important for us to be out in the community reminding people of that and making sure that they have the safety information that they need. That's my quick safety presentation. Thank you. I'm happy.
I have a suggestion that you could take back to the people downtown, and that is if you had a screen, an outdoor screen that size on each side of the track and hooked up to a camera that was looking down or up the track, and when the train was coming, it would actually show the train and which direction it was coming from, and if you had two coming, it could show them both, you know, coming in opposite directions. And if that didn't scare the bejeebers out of kids as they come up to the track there, you know, they would see on there that a train is actually coming and it's going to be here in a short period of time, so don't cross the track. Okay?
Thank you.
So take that back to your bosses.
We'll start this way and then go that way. Yes. Blue shirt.
How often are the trains scheduled?
So right now, we're working on our schedule when we launch to Miami. As I mentioned, we will not start with the 16 northbound and 16 southbound. So it will be a more moderate schedule. Right now, we operate, like I mentioned, 11 and 11 between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach. So you could expect something similar to that. We don't have trains that run at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., although I know some of the freight trains go through here at that time. We're more of an earlier morning, like a 5:30 to a later evening, 10, 11 type of service.
So if there's 14, 15, 16 hours in the day, then you really wouldn't expect to see a train more than once an hour.
Yeah, so I think talking when we're fully operational, you can see 2 Brightline trains per hour. 2 Brightline trains per hour tops. Again, those trains take 45 seconds to get through a crossing, so you're looking at, you know, crossings being closed less than the amount of a typical traffic signal. Yes, sir.
And go in between the trains.
So FECR operates, they've shifted a lot of their train traffic to the evening hours, but they still operate during the day. Obviously, they have an early morning train that comes down from Jacksonville and has all of the packages on it that need to be delivered. So, and then some of the stuff that comes out of the port and local customers. So there will be trains during the day, but a lot of them will operate during the evening time. Yes.
Ali, are you guys going to keep the same railroad crossing sticks? I've seen other for heavy congestion intersections where they have rollaway barriers that help.
So I don't think those are in America, if you will, because
Sure.
the ones that we have. So all railroads are the same. They're governed by the same authority. We're governed by the Federal Railroad Administration, and then we work obviously with the Florida Department of Transportation, who has oversight over the roadways that cross railroad tracks. So everything that you see out there is the same thing as other trains that are operating across the United States.
My only concern is, you know, an intersection like 163rd Street or these busy intersections where I guess are more prone to cars crossing through the gates. Is there going to be some kind of...
In some of those, I think there might be the 4-quadrant gate where they touch. That was done separately as part of the quiet zone analysis to determine where those gates should be located. Like I said, those will be installed in the coming months, and that is when the quiet zone will take effect after those gates are put in place.
Could you explain more how the 4-quadrant gates work?
They work just like the gates out here, except so you have if the traffic's traveling this way, you have the gate that comes down obviously in the direction that the car is traveling. But this person, I liken it to a red light, right? If you're stopped at a red light, the choice is up to you to stop. You could run that red light and risk your life and somebody else's, but it's the law for you to stop. So just like that light is red, this gate is down and telling you not to cross. If you choose as a driver to go through that gate, you are breaking the law and circumventing that infrastructure that's in place to protect you. A 4-quadrant gate is on the other side of the roadway so that this person doesn't have the option to go through. It doesn't stop a pedestrian or a bicyclist from going under the gates or through the gates, but it's designed to prevent cars. You also don't have to have a 4-quadrant gate. You can have a median and a gate so that that car can't drive, it's prevented from driving over the median into oncoming traffic. Somebody else had a question on the side. Yes?
Couple questions, and then you can just answer them all at one time.
Yes.
So, you mentioned that the railroad is the Brightline is privately owned.
That's correct.
So who are the beneficial owners? You don't need to answer right now. Who are the beneficial owners? Is the board of directors of the Brightline listed on the website? And as to, in past weeks, we've all noticed that there have been Florida Highway Patrolmen at the gates and so forth. What was the purpose of that? And back to the question of, the trains all seem to be going, when I say trains, the Brightline, at a much faster pace, but the arms seem to be coming down shortly before the train arrives.
I'm going to start from the bottom
Yeah.
and work my way up. So it is federal regulation that the arms go down for a certain amount of time before the train passes. So they are out in the corridor. You know, that technology has been installed. Number two, FHP and flaggers, as we call them, or people with flags telling you not to cross, have been in place, number one, when we were testing the system to make sure that there was the communication between the train and the gate arms, and if there wasn't, that person was in place during the testing phase to make sure that they were there to stop a car from going across. We have elected, as I talked about safety ambassadors, we have elected in certain areas to keep flaggers or off-duty officers at designated crossings to also help with the increased safety, awareness, and presence. Brightline is privately owned, operated, and maintained. We are owned by a private investment group from New York. Brightline itself does not have a board of directors, but our management team is listed on the website. Anybody else from this side, and then I'll turn to this side. Yes.
So the times that I sat behind the track for 20 minutes or 15 minutes, they were
normal.
testing it. They were just testing, right?
They are not. That is not normal, and it should not happen when we are fully operational. And I apologize for the inconvenience. So, yes.
You said that during the summer it would be quiet. What happens after that period?
So from the summer on, it'll be quiet. The summer is just when you can expect things, the quiet zone to take place.
It's not summer.
It's not like a seasonal thing. Sorry if I was not clear. Starting from when we put the infrastructure in, the counties and the cities have to file what's called a notice of establishment with the FRA. They will file that notice of establishment. The rule on the railroad will change. It will become a quiet zone, and therefore the engineers will not be required, once that rule is in place, to blow the horn from that point forward, once that quiet zone takes effect. So that's expected to be in place in the summer until the city or county decides that it no longer wants a quiet zone. Does that help? Okay. Yes. You have one question?
Oh, so I wanted to ask, is it still true though that engineers have the right to blow their horn?
Yeah, if there's an emergency.
Okay.
If in a quiet zone, it is the rule not to blow the horn. So there has to be an emergency situation for them to blow their horn. Yes. All right, any more from this side? I'm going to switch to the side. I'm going to start in the back. Yes.
Yes, I was just curious because before Brightline, if you wanted to go to Fort Lauderdale, there was already a train that took you through Hialeah, which is an area that is not residential. So this one, but why did they choose to go through this one instead?
So passenger rail existed on the FEC railway up until the 1960s. Then it was taken off, and pretty much ever since then, Tri-Rail and other entities like Amtrak have been looking to reestablish passenger rail on this railroad because it really goes through the major downtowns, right? So Henry Flagler developed this railroad, and when he did, Florida didn't exist. And so cities grew up along the railroad, which is why our station in downtown Miami is located on the land where Henry Flagler's downtown Miami station was located. In Fort Lauderdale, our station is in downtown Fort Lauderdale, and our station in West Palm Beach is in downtown West Palm Beach. And that's why you have passenger rail coming back to this train track, is because it really is serving those urban areas that need to be served by passenger rail. We are different than Tri-Rail. Tri-Rail is a local service where it stops 18 times between northern West Palm Beach and the airport, It takes a little more than 2 hours to make that journey. On Brightline, once we're fully done with construction and operational, it will take 30 minutes to get from Miami to Fort Lauderdale, and then 30 minutes to get from Fort Lauderdale to West Palm Beach. So we are an express intercity train that will then eventually connect to Orlando and potentially other parts of the state. Other questions from this side?
You mentioned municipalities having the obligation to coordinate the quiet zone
Yes.
technology. Is there someone from the village that can speak to?
Tom he's been leading that effort.
Can I get an update from the village?
I can tell you that it's not us coordinating it, it's the county.
Yes.
The county is coordinating it. We have periodic meetings, but the county is the lead agency that's taking this over. So the county is working directly with Brightline. They're working with the Federal Railway Administration. So it's not us doing that, it's the county. They've got to install the infrastructure, which they're in the process of doing, at which time the county then, we're going to have a group meeting with everybody, and once everything is approved, then the county, through the TPO, will apply for the quiet crossings, not the village.
The important thing about the quiet zones, though, is obviously, so Brightline's blowing its horn to warn people that it's coming through. A quiet zone is really a quality of life improvement. It's not a necessity for the railroad to operate. So once the quiet zone, before the quiet zone goes in place, you know, everyone who's in this room, it's up to really all of us to help spread the message to our neighbors and to our kids on what a quiet zone means. Because it's really important with that new condition coming in to remind people that it's not safe to cross the tracks at non-designated crossings, and that train won't be blowing its horn.
So the application hasn't been done yet because the technology
We're not
is
done
installed?
doing the supplemental safety measures.
So what, the summer is an extended period of time between there and that?
I can tell you by the end of the summer, it will be, we anticipate it will be in place.
End of summer, like September, end of summer?
It could be sooner.
So the equipment has not yet been installed?
Some of the equipment has been installed, so where they need to be.
I'm asking specifically between 108 and El Portal.
The county elected to do it as a county, so even if all of the infrastructure was done in Miami Shores, you still
Right,
could not.
I get it, but what's the status of Miami Shores? That's all I want to really.
I mean, if there was a median, the medians have been installed, but the 4-quadrant gates will not be in place until later this summer. Other questions from this side? Yes.
I want to respectfully, I don't want anybody to take this wrong, answer 2 comments. My dear children and adults and morons driving around gates have been doing it here and all up and down the East Coast since April 15, 1896, not for 40 years. So I just want you to be aware of how long that terrible situation is going on. And if you all want to see your children safe, ladies and gentlemen, then when you leave this meeting, start tonight and get out there and talk to the children and tell them to stay off the tracks, stay away from the tracks. Don't expect other people to do it. You do it. And for the nice gentleman who said, why can't we put up cameras with screens? The problem, most of our metal crossing signs have been stolen within 3 weeks. So how long, with all due respect, do we think that a movie camera and a screen are going to last? If it's
try
a week,
it.
we'll be
We
lucky.
could try it.
Sir?
Here in Miami Shores, we could be the pioneer to see if it works.
You know the old we can try it?
Okay, I'm gonna take more questions.
We can try it. Who's going to pay for it?
Yes.
That's the problem.
I'm happy to answer.
So the question I have is on the quiet zones. What I read when I looked at the website is that quiet zone is, they're still going to blow the horns at the intersection. So the train won't blow, but the cars who are here at 96th Street will hear something.
That is only if there is an, it's called a wayside horn. We did not install wayside horns in any intersections between Miami and West Palm Beach because the transportation planning organizations elected to move forward with quiet zones. So no, there will not be, there will be bells because those are for obviously ADA compliancy, but no, there will not be horns at the intersections unless there's an emergency after the quiet zone is in place.
One more question. When it comes to freight trains, I assume we can also expect more freight trains going through.
No, so that's not necessarily a true fact either. So FECR is restricted first and foremost by the length of their trains due to the size of their yards. So the biggest trains that they really have are up to 2 miles long. They also have plenty of capacity to double stack rather than
double, and it seems like the engines are now bigger than they were before. So when it comes to the sound of the freight trains, it has increased. I live over on 8th Avenue, so I've seen them double stacked, and I see the actual engines a lot larger than they used to.
So, but I mean, I think for FECR, double stacking is a little bit more economical.
So what you're saying is there will be less number of trains, but they could be
they operate 14 to 15 freight trains a day, and that number has been consistent for a couple of years. So, it really, I will say this, I know it's not a welcome comment, but freight actually removes tens of thousands of trucks from I-95 and our roadways every single year. It's how food gets transported into South Florida. It's how food comes off the port. Cotton comes in, it goes to the plants. So
it's just the engines definitely seem to be bigger than they used to be in the past.
So you're saying from Miami to Fort Lauderdale, it'll take 30 minutes. If we live here in Miami Shores and we'll take an Uber to downtown to your station, that takes at least 20-30 minutes to hop on the train and all that, then I add my driving time. So to what extent is it attractive for us here to use that train, taking a look at this time calculation?
So, I mean, Brightline is looking to be an intermodal solution for pretty much all of Florida. So there is a need to provide this service between downtown to downtown. The Miami-Dade TPO is looking at putting, whether you support that or not, a commuter rail service on the FEC corridor. They're looking to do that at a cost that is significantly less because of the investment that Brightline has made. Ultimately, that's something that everybody in this room will probably go to a meeting and talk to the TPO and decide. But as a private company, we're making a significant investment in the infrastructure that we own to provide a mobility solution for millions of people. And then ultimately, it's a statewide solution. So we're connecting to Orlando, to Tampa, to Jacksonville are all in our future plans. So it's really looking at how can we move the state and continue to move the state as more people move here.
Are there any scenarios that you will add other stations between Miami and West Palm Beach?
Yes, there are scenarios that we would look at to add stations.
Okay.
Right now, I can tell you we're focused on getting Miami open and then obviously running that phase 1 service to see what customers dictate, what they like, what they don't like, hours that they need to be adjusted, and then obviously our other priority is getting started on the work to Orlando.
And you just did mention Tampa and Jacksonville. Can you allude to scenarios of your phase 3 or
I just did.
Well,
maybe a timeline to Orlando.
We don't have a timeline. I mean, we've said from the get-go when we announced All Aboard Florida, which is now Brightline in 2012, that obviously extensions to Tampa are natural things that we're looking at in Jacksonville because we own the right-of-way. But those are, future plans and stuff that we're working on. So, but you can't extend to Tampa and Jacksonville without first connecting Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, and then to Orlando.
My last question is, who's the provider of the trains and how happy have you been with their products and services?
So our trains are 100% made in America. Every component was manufactured in the United States and then assembled in Sacramento by Siemens, and they are also our service provider. So not only are our train sets 100% made in America, but all of the rail infrastructure that's in the corridor is also made in America as well. So the timber, the ties, the ballast, the rail itself, we wanted to make sure that we were supporting the economy when we built this
And
project.
how happy have you been with Siemens?
We love our train sets. We love them. You should go on one. I assure you, you'll love it too.
Well, I work for Siemens.
There you go. I'm glad I answered that correctly.
We caught it.
All right, yes, we'll finish on this side and then go back.
Is the system completely self-contained funding, private funding, or is there a subsidy from the public of how much and where does it come from?
So there's, we have not requested any grants or operating subsidies for the project. So we are utilizing a federal program to fund phase one, which is called private activity bonds, which means the investors do not pay taxes, obviously, on the revenue from the bonds, but it is not a subsidy program or a grant by any means. It is a program that was specifically created by the federal government to fund projects such as ours.
So you're saying the intention is that it is completely self-funded?
Yes.
Are the bonds guaranteed?
No, they're guaranteed by us, not the federal government. Yes.
So I respectfully would like to disagree with you about the funding.
Please.
I would disagree about the funding. The City of Miami CRA has committed $17 million in
I can address
tax
that.
increment funding.
Great question.
Plus, they've also did a deal for the property where your headquarters on 3rd Street are going to be built.
So I'll start with the property. Brightline purchased the property for $2 million from the Overtown Park West CRA, which we built one of the first major developments in historic Overtown in decades. We met the hiring requirements to hire locals to work on our project, and we've also hired 25% of Brightline staff from Miami Central from the surrounding community. So we're actually very, very proud of our investment in historic Overtown. As for the $17 million, Tri-Rail will connect into downtown Miami on Miami Central. This is a long explanation, so bear with me. In 2012, the federal government funded a Tiger grant to connect the FEC and the CSX corridor in 2 places, Northwood and West Palm Beach, and then Iris, which is around 79th Street in Miami-Dade County. So those 2 connections will allow the existing Tri-Rail system to come on to the FEC corridor and terminate directly into downtown Miami. Our station in downtown Miami, as you may have seen, is elevated 50 feet. So obviously, if you're going to build in downtown Miami, in our station, and if you're going to exist there, you have to build the infrastructure when we are under construction. A public entity could not come back and retrofit that structure to actually make Tri-Rail go into downtown Miami. So what we did was we started working with SFRTA and the local governments to decide if Tri-Rail wanted to come into downtown Miami. They elected to do so, and so the CRA funded the $17 million, which is part of a larger amount for Tri-Rail to come into our system. It does not fund Brightline's portion. Brightline, in fact, is allowing Tri-Rail to operate on our corridor for a very nominal amount because we see this as an incredible benefit to the community. But in no way, shape, or form is the Overtown CRA investment or the city investment or the DDA investment or anyone's investment funding Brightline. I respectfully disagree.
But you got the property that you bought for $2 million was valued at $10 million.
Again, we're very proud of what we're bringing to historic Overtown.
I've written about
Yes.
that.
Will other railways, whether it be Tri-Rail or others, can we expect additional trains other than Brightline and/or FEC to run on this corridor here?
That is a question entirely up to the public. So Tri-Rail is a public system, which would obviously have to operate on a funding system. So again, local governments are looking at extending Tri-Rail or having a commuter rail type service operate on the FEC railway. Just like Brightline had to go through an environmental phase, they would have to go through the same thing. So it's premature for me to answer something like that because there's a lot of things that have to take place.
But conceivably, it could happen.
Anything.
Okay.
I mean, the SMART, again, I mentioned the SMART plan, which is the TPO. They have their SMART plan, which identifies the FPC corridor as a target for commuter rail. So, you know, that's, I would say that. All right, I'm going to start this way and work my way back.
Okay. You mentioned, it's my understanding, that if the quiet zone goes into effect, that would eliminate the horns and the whistles, except possibly in the case of emergency. However, as I was sitting here listening to what came through outside, there's also what I would call a clanging noise. I don't know if that's the correct term or not. And that, to me, is helpful as a driver, you know, to know that a train is coming. Is that also included? It doesn't seem loud like the horn or the whistle. Would that also be eliminated in a quiet zone?
The only thing that a quiet zone eliminates is the horn.
Oh.
Unless there's an emergency.
Okay, so we could still hope to hear that clanging.
Well, I think the clanginess that you hear is the train actually operating on the track. So
Thinking about the bells.
Well, the bells are not. The bells are there for the ADA compliancy. So those will definitely stay. The only thing in a quiet zone that goes away is the horn.
Okay.
But what stays, and what's really important, is that there are flashing red lights. There are gates that go down. There's signage that says railroad crossing. All of that means stop. The train is approaching.
And as my husband just said, what I'm calling clanging is in tandem with the flashing red lights.
Understood.
Okay, but that would continue.
The only thing that goes away is the horn.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm happy for that.
What's your estimation for ridership from on the Miami-Fort Lauderdale route?
Well, so for full build-out ridership between Miami and Orlando, we expect more than 3 million riders. So we know that there's a market for business travelers. There's a very big market, even when we've been operating between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach, for leisure traveler, and then also for tourists. Obviously, when we get to Orlando, and in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach, there's a huge tourism market as well.
And is there additional parking?
Yes, we have parking at each of our stations.
For how many? Because that's a big problem
We have
for us.
lots. So our station in downtown Miami connects. So multimodal is really important for us. So our station in downtown Miami is called Miami Central. It's 11 acres. It connects with 2 Metro Mover stops, 2 Metro Rail stops, bus, trolley, bike share, rental car, and it will also have Tri-Rail. So, and it has parking.
See those colored things on the right there, the blue, the green? That's a parking lot, 900 spaces?
No, that's the Overtown Transit Village.
Yeah, but it's a park. But no, your building is behind it, the blue one.
No. Our building is not in that picture. Our building is, yes, you're right, the glass building is there, correct. I apologize.
Yeah, so they both have parking in there.
That's not just parking though, we're going to have a grocery store there.
You got a
office
Publix, yeah.
Einstein's, someone knows. Yeah. There you go. I like that.
Can the train be expanded to more cars?
Yeah, so full build out when we go to Orlando, it'll be 9 cars. So 2
cars.
locomotives and 7 passenger cars.
It's going to be longer.
It's going to be longer, but it's a negligible difference when it comes into a safety crossing.
Okay.
It's, yes. Yes.
I want to thank you for coming into this room tonight. As you see, a lot of my neighbors have a lot of good questions and a lot of important concerns. And I think your trains are beautiful. They look nice, and the engines and the cars run much more quietly than does FEC. But anyway, I want to know, after tonight, how do we reach you if we come up with another question or issue?
I'm happy to share my information with Tom. You can post my email on online, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Yeah, so thank you. I'm happy to be here too. Obviously, again, safety and accurate information is really important to us at Brightline, so I'm thankful for the village for inviting me to present tonight. Yes, ma'am.
I heard you say that the quiet zones are determined by the TPO. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. The quiet zones are determined by the Federal Railroad Administration, and that work has already been completed. So the TPO already, and we, because we're going to construct it, we already know what needs to be in place for a quiet zone to take effect. So we will be constructing those additional improvements in the coming months, and then after those improvements are in place, a quiet zone will take effect.
And my question is Miami Shores one of those quiet zones?
There will be a continuous quiet zone from Port Miami to the northern Miami-Dade County line along the FEC Railway. So yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we who live in Miami Shores, if we were to pick up Brightline to ride it, is the anticipated station gonna be in Iris or 79th Street?
Downtown Miami.
Okay, sorry.
Downtown Miami. No, oh,
It used to be over there.
Is the track a double track all the way up and back? There's no sharing of tracks between trains at all?
So that's a great question. Both trains use each track. So the two, FEC and Brightline, are dispatched out of the same office. So, by the same company. So the tracks are kind of like an interstate highway, if you will. That's why I said anytime is train time, because there could be a freight train going in one direction and a passenger train moving in the other direction. So it's really important to stay off. Yes, Seth?
Let me bring it down to brass tacks. Okay? How many of you have been on Biscayne Boulevard lately? How many of you have been on I-95 lately? Folks, do you want that to continue? 3 million residents in Dade County alone, plus another million illegals. So do you want this traffic to continue and get worse? This is just the start of what we need, to take more people off the road.
Safety is our top priority. Yes, ma'am.
Is that a nice big parking lot behind the Brightline there for our cars?
So what you see, so Brightline's actually also unique because not only are we developing the transportation system, but we're also developing what's called transit-oriented development around our train station. So Miami is about 3 million square feet of mixed-use development. That building that you see in the forefront is called 2 Miami Central. It's a Class A office space building. Behind that, we're building 2 residential towers, apartments only, because people live in apartments. When they rent apartments, they primarily live there. So we're trying to really activate the areas and bring more people into where we're operating. So that's what you see. There is parking in this building, but a lot of the parking is also just like a half a block behind at 3 Miami Central, which is where Brightline's headquarters are located, where we'll have a future grocery store, and where also an Einstein's will be located.
How far out is all this?
Weeks away.
But it's not built yet.
So that building, this picture is like maybe 3-4 weeks old. The scaffolding that you see there is for the office building. It's not for the station. The station is actually underneath. So all of this area in here. So basically when we looked at downtown Miami and building a station, we decided that it needed to be elevated. Number one, to not cut off major city streets to Port Miami. And then number two, our goal is to create a pleasant, urban, walkable downtown to add to what downtown Miami has and is growing into. And so Brightline terminates, again, 50 feet in the air. You would go down to the ground level, walk. For someone in West Palm Beach who wouldn't go to a Heat game now because they'd have to leave at 4 o'clock and it would still take them 2.5 hours to get there. Now they could take Brightline, be in downtown Miami in 60 minutes, walk 7 minutes to the American Airlines Arena, and be home before half of those people even get out of the parking garage for the heat.
So that parking garage is built already?
The parking garage is built. The station is almost built.
Do you have a cost for
This
the
is a
parking?
parking garage, 900 spaces. This is the headquarters building for Brightline. They have some parking there, I don't know how much. There's an empty lot here, which is also going to include, new construction is going to have parking. On this side of the street, they're building a new convention center and a hotel. That'll have parking. And there's other parking around.
Do they have good drainage? Do you know that?
Take a canoe with
Who
you.
wants to give this presentation next?
That's probably the most important thing.
I mean, who wants to give this presentation next? All right, I'm so happy that I came, so thank you for having me.